I may have gotten banned from an IHOP, but this man got banned from a whole country. Hey guys, it's Nicole. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Today I have the long-awaited full folklore album analysis that you guys have been requesting. This video kicks off the start of swiftsgiving, which will be a month-long schedule of doing a Taylor Swift related video every single Sunday of November at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. I do have a sponsorship due soon, so there will be a random bonus video in there, but make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time a new swiftsgiving video comes out. There will also be a playlist down in the description of every single swiftsgiving video, and also let me know down in the comments if you guys would like the rest to be posted as premieres. And lastly, I will also have timestamps of all of the songs down in the description so that you guys can go straight to whatever song you want to hear my theory on, and let's get into the video. So we do not have our whiteboard today. We are not as crazed anymore. Still excited, don't get me wrong, but it is no longer album release week. Okay, we are eating regularly, we are sleeping through the night, we're not waking up in the middle of the night like,
don't call me kid, don't call me baby. Look at this godforsaken mess that you've made me.
So we are going to be analyzing the rest of the Folklore album. I say the rest of because that clip you saw earlier was from a video I posted a couple of months ago called Does Betty Take James Back?, where I analyzed what I believe are the Teenage Love Triangle songs off of the album. If you want to see that video, you can watch it up here, and I will only be touching on those 3 songs just a little to share what other things I've kind of realized or thought about those songs, and I will mainly be focusing on the rest of the album. So first of all, Taylor has recently released the lyrics to the original Cardigan song, which is what I think is one of the Love Triangle songs, and something that stood out to me was the original lyric, "But I knew you, living in a gold age, sneak into my bird cage," which is reminiscent of that scene in the Look What You Made Me Do music video, and it also sounds like a Joe reference from that time. Like, it's recently come out that that cage in the music video symbolizes her old record label and being trapped by that, and we all know Joe's been a salvation for her. And I have noticed that all of these songs on Folklore, even the ones that I think are about fictional characters, do have a little bit of Taylor in them. The second thing I want to talk about with the Love Triangle songs is someone in the comments of that video pointed out that they think the August girl's name is August, which I kind of like, because that's kind of like bad vibes. Like, August slipped away, like she's saying she slipped away, like she got away from him. But then it's also confusing because she says, "'cause it was never mine," which kind of has I Knew You Were Trouble vibes, like she lost herself kind of, or at least the version of herself when she was with James. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And third, which is the last point I have to make about those songs I talked about in the previous video, there's a whole theory in the comments of that video from Antonella Villarino on Instagram. I unfortunately lost her comments in there, but she was basically comparing the Love Triangle to Gossip Girl, and there were actually a few other comments after hers where people were making comparisons there, but hers was by far the most developed theory. I highly recommend that you guys go hunt it down if you're interested. What I do remember is she was saying that James could represent Serena, Betty could represent Blair, and August could represent Nate. And when Serena sleeps with Nate, who is Blair's boyfriend, and Antonella draws these amazing parallels where the important relationship is between Blair and Serena, like James and Betty, not Nate and Blair, which would be August girl and James. Like, that's not meant to happen. And maybe Inez could represent Dan, like in the case that Dan would tell Blair about it in hopes that Serena would leave Nate so that Dan could have a chance with her. This might sound kind of confusing to people who have not watched Gossip Girl, but trust me, like, it's just super fun to think about. Okay, so now let's get into this out of order analysis of the rest of the songs. And the reason they're out of order is because of the connections that I see between some of them. So I will be grouping those together. I also feel like I am the last person who believes that Taylor wrote about stuff other than the Teenage Love Triangle. Like, this girl be telling stories. So the first group of songs that I want to talk about is songs that I believe are standalone songs. They tell their own story and they're not really connected to any of the other songs. And the first one that I think is a standalone song is The Last Great American Dynasty. So it is widely agreed upon that this song is about Rebecca Harkness and her husband Bill and her friendship with Salvador Dali. There's a ton of details about her life that match up. And then there is a little reference in this song to Mad Woman, where she sings, "There goes the maddest woman this town has ever seen," but she only sings it once. So because of that, I think it's kind of just a nod to the other song, as well as I really think Mad Woman is from the perspective of another fictional character. We'll get into that later. And I don't see the character in this song being similar to the character in that song. Like, this song is a really wild, like, don't give a damn, carefree kind of woman, but Mad Woman, like, that woman has got beef. you know? Like Mad Woman is a very dark song, but I feel like with The Last Great American Dynasty, Taylor is really trying to embody the spirit of folklore with this song, because this song has a time jump in the bridge where it skips ahead 50 years to where Taylor buys Rebecca's house, and it compares like the similarities between her and Rebecca. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's a whole tale. This song reminds me of the song Betty because it is not vague at all, unlike a lot of the songs on the album. Like, it is so transparent. And the last detail I want to point out about this song is that Taylor sings that Rebecca dyed her neighbor's dog key lime green, when in fact it was the cat. And this is a very folklore vibe, like stories getting passed down and details getting mixed up. And as I mentioned in the previous video, it could kind of be setting up a dynamic of some of the characters on Folklore not being completely reliable, like James, or even possibly Betty or August Girl for that matter. Okay, Epiphany is the second and last song that falls into this standalone category for me. This is the song that I believe she is paying tribute to her grandfather in. He was fighting in World War II and she sings about his experience. So she sings about his experience in the first verse, and then in the second verse she sings about what I'm thinking is frontline healthcare workers in modern times. This interpretation isn't confirmed, at least with the second verse. I know she mentioned her grandfather in this album because she said she did, so that's what verse 1 is. But the second verse has lyrics about med school, and there's a line that says, "Hold your hand through plastic now," which is like the literal plastic barriers that COVID patients had to use to have any kind of contact with their family while they were in the hospital. And it seems very on purpose that she sings someone's daughter, someone's mother. There was a comment on my other video that said they think that verse is about the nurses in those old wars, but I think it's about recent times because women weren't fighting in those wars, at least on the American side, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Like, it seems very on purpose that she's switching from the perspective of a male character in the first verse with "Keep Your Life, Son," to a definite female character in the second verse may be affected by COVID with someone's daughter, someone's mother. I also really like the possible nod to how healthcare workers in the beginning of the pandemic, especially in like New York, they were working these really long shifts, and it's possible that they only had 20 minutes to sleep, as she sings about. The number 20 actually comes up many times in this album. I think that's kind of a recurring, I don't think it means anything connectivity-wise, I think it's just a recurring theme, kind of how the Dark Nights of Reputation or the color blue in Lover. I don't think those songs are necessarily connected. Also, the line "watch you breathe in, watch you breathing out" sounds like if you were watching someone sleeping who was affected by COVID and you're obviously very paranoid about their breathing and you're just kind of paying attention to how their lungs are doing while they're asleep. And lastly, I also think Taylor Swift was one of the first celebrities who publicly post about how serious the pandemic was and encouraging people to stay inside. So she seems like the kind of person who would have mad respect for healthcare workers and have this concern inside of her for like her immunocompromised mom. Also, it doesn't seem unlikely to me that she would like shout out healthcare workers during this time while making an album in quarantine where she was thinking like escapist thoughts because of the pandemic and the stress. I'm sure she was really hoping that they could take care of this and probably sending her best wishes to them to hopefully get this under control. It seems like she definitely would have thought about this in quarantine, so she probably wrote about it. Okay, so now we've come to the collection of songs that I believe are autobiographical, the character in Folklore that is Taylor herself. So the first song I want to talk about is 7. In the first verse, she immediately mentions Pennsylvania, which is where she grew up before moving to Nashville. And I also love the Folklore tie-ins with passed down like folk songs, Our Love Lasts So Long. The second verse is what I mostly want to talk about because it's very loaded. It has the line, "I think your house is haunted, your dad is always mad, and that must be why." It really captures that childlike naivety of the song. And then the line, "and then you won't have to cry or hide in the closet." And at first I thought this line was very much about like domestic, I don't want to get demonetized, but it could also possibly be about a homophobic father. Either way, that's some deep shit. And then in the bridge, there's a line that says, "Please picture me in the weeds. Before I learned civility, I used to scream ferociously." This sounds like a very personal line to Taylor. And she's saying like, please remember me as I was when I was a child, like before I became this like polished pop star and like this civilized person. And this isn't the first time that Taylor has written a song about somebody's perspective of her after that time with them has passed. Like Wildest Dreams is entirely about hoping her ex-lover will think well of her after it's over. And I speculate that this song may be about Brittany, who is one of her childhood best friends. I can't think of anyone else we would know of, but then again, there are probably so many people in her life that we do not know of. Okay, the next autobiographical song I want to talk about is Invisible String. I think this is very much about Joe. And can we talk about how poetic green was the color of the glass? Did I just say glass? Teal was the color of your shirt is like the phrasing of those words. I believe it's based off of this form of an Irish poem or something, but this is definitely autobiographical. She talks about Central Park she used to read at, the yogurt shop that Joe has confirmed that he worked at. It's Snogg's frozen yogurt shop in London, by the way. We found it. The Swifties, we found it. And the chorus talks about like fate tying him to her, and the second verse mentions her song, Bad Blood, and that the narrator of the song is an American singer, or looks like an American singer. I mean, who else, you know? It also mentions the lakes. We will keep this in mind. And then she sings about this string of fate that pulls her into this dive bar. Where have we heard stuff about a dive bar before? Who were those songs about? Cold was the steel of my axe to grind for the boys who broke my heart. Now I send their babies presents. Like, that just completely encapsulates the maturity of this album. And she even recently called herself out on Ellen about how when she was 18 and she called out Joe Jonas on her show. And now I'm pretty sure she actually sent his newborn baby a present. Joe, not the Joe she's dating now, the other Joe, this, you know what I mean. If you're here, you probably know what I mean. That's what I think she's referencing here, and that's what all the evidence I have to prove that this is one of the Taylor songs. And I love that she ends it with her showing her new man around Centennial Park. This song is just very satisfying. I'm going to talk about it a little more in my review, but this is just strictly an analysis and an explanation of my theories. Okay, so next is The Lakes. I also think this is an autobiographical song, especially because in the previous song that also is probably autobiographical, she references the lakes, so it probably ties into each other. I think she spent a lot of time in the Lake District that she's referencing. It's also in Joe's home country. God, I'm Soviet as hell. His motherland. And this song is a straight up poem as well. I'll talk about that more in an actual review. In the first verse, she says, "Is it romantic how all my elegies eulogize me? More death, more look what you made me do vibes." Then in the next line, she's, I think, basically tired of like paparazzi constantly taking pictures of her. She once talked about in an interview how having all those cameras waiting outside of her house kind of feels like being hunted. So I think that's what she's talking about here. In the chorus, we get more death. Take me to the lakes where all the poets went to die. I think the Lake District is famous for its poets, and also like the Windermere Peaks, that's in that area. She says she's setting off, but not without her muse, which, I mean, you gotta always have a knowledgeable local when you travel, like, come on. The second verse, she says, "I've come too far to watch some name-dropping sleaze tell me what are my words worth." Now this is nice. This is my favorite. She references the poet Wordsworth, who is from the area of the lakes, but who do we think the name-dropping sleaze who is giving her words monetary value is? Who do we think it is? I can tell you one thing, he is unfortunately not imaginary. Yes, I did that. Then the bridge basically paints this picture of all these beautiful things happening in nature with no one around to tweet it. It reminds me of the journal entry that was included in some of the Lover editions where she talks about how she's of the generation that loves to take pictures of things and moments and post it on the internet and check the comments all day. This is also another reason why I believe this song is autobiographical. Okay, next is the song Peace. I think this song is autobiographical because it reminds me of the fear Taylor has that she is unable to give Joe peace due to the life she leads. Dancing with Our Hands Tied on Reputation, I think, talks about kind of that fear in the beginning of their relationship. And she kept the relationship private for as long as she could, and she was really afraid when the media found out. I think she even journaled about this on Lover again. So it's not a stretch to think that those are the same feelings she's singing about here. In the chorus, she basically like professes her love for him and mentions all the things that she could give him, but she could not give him a peaceful life. And she's asking if all the things she would do for him would be enough, and how he'll always be talked about in the press. And there is a little allusion to Epiphany in this song where she sings "Sit with you in the trenches," and she says, "Give you my wild, give you a child." This feels like a really personal line. Maybe she wants to start a family with Joe. She also says she sees his brother as her brother, which we do know. Joe has a brother. They painted his wall blue in paper rings. And then she sings, "But there's robbers to the east and clowns to the west." Who do we think that's about? Again, a very personal line here. Okay, and the last song that I believe is autobiographical is the song Mirrorball. I tried to fit this into one of the fictional narratives that I was creating, but I just couldn't. It's also a pretty vague song, but I will tell you why I have concluded that I think it is from Taylor's perspective. First of all, mirrorball dress, see the mirrorball, feel the mirrorball, be the mirrorball. I think the song is kind of about Taylor's own commentary on her career. The first verse feels like she's saying, "I'm an entertainer who writes these relatable songs. I can show you every version of yourself. I can put you in all of these different moods, whether you're dancing to Shake It Off or crying to All Too Well." All of that reflects off of her. Like, we see ourselves in Taylor. That's something that makes her so successful even today, is she's very relatable. And she's able to get people out on the floor. Reputation was the highest grossing tour of all time, and she shimmered beautifully, but it has the ability to break her from all of the pressures of fame, possibly. And the chorus sounds like she's basically saying she'll always be entertaining her true fans and putting out new music for them, even if the end is near. This is very vague also. There's so many theories on what this line means. I kind of think maybe like the end of her career. She talked about this in Miss Americana, how women in the music industry are disposed in an elephant graveyard past the age of 30. And I think she's constantly going to be generating buzz around her new music, but like she's kind of been on a commercial downhill since 1989, getting snubbed at the Grammys, all of this crap. Her music is just as good, if not better, than it was back when it was very commercially successful with 1989. But I think every artist, especially one with such longevity like she has had, they always have a commercial peak, but then after that it's all just true fans from then on. She says she can change everything about herself to fit in. She talked about this in Miss Americana, how she's had to reinvent herself way more times than male entertainers because people always expect more of women. Then she says, you are not like the regulars who are fascinated by her shattered edges. This could either be about Jo or her fans. I think I'm leaning more towards fans. Like, this song has started to embody kind of Long Live vibes for me. In the bridge, she paints this picture that kind of references the Red Tour, where she has that whole circus theme going on. And even after her career is over, in a sense, she'll still be creating music both for her fans and for herself. That's what I'm getting from this. And okay, if I have not lost you up to this point, I will now. Now we're getting to the real escapism, the fictional characters other than Betty James and August Girl. And these stories also have the possibility of playing out like a movie, maybe kind of like Let It Snow by John Green, whether that's geographic location, like possibly New York, or just with like themes in general. All of these songs have a little bit of Taylor in them, and I will mention that. I also came up with my own name for these characters because Taylor won't give us any. It's just Man and Tormentor. The three fictional storylines I believe we have are the teenage love triangle, the exiled man, and the embittered tormentor. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about the exiled man storyline and the songs that I believe are connected in that. So first we have Exile, obviously. Now first I gotta set the scene. Get ready to reach with me here, okay? Just hear me out. The songs I believe that are in this storyline are all of the songs with film references. There are just way too many, and I don't think those are by accident. Now let me introduce the characters. So first we have our exiled man, who I'm gonna call Tyler. He's our main character. I think he's an actor. That's why there are all these film references. He's very motivated by his profession. In fact, so motivated that he moves from New York, where he's lived all his life, to a foreign country because of a job opportunity there, where they will be filming on location. His personality is very sporadic. He struggled with alcohol and addictive tendencies and will drop essentially everything for this opportunity. Up to this point, Tyler has lived in this New York apartment with his girlfriend, Elizabeth. They met in kind of this party scene and maybe don't have the healthiest relationship. They definitely have some issues that could probably benefit from going to couples therapy or any kind of therapy, and they're struggling with their finances, etc. But Tyler basically says, yo, it's been real, but Elizabeth, I had to take this opportunity. So he cuts the lease short and he moves abroad. I've got a map behind me. How convenient. While abroad, he meets this very dignified woman. Maybe this country has some sort of form of royalty, something like that. So Tyler and this woman, let's call her Sylvia, they form this like whirlwind relationship, and it basically ends in shambles because this very respected professional woman kind of discovers who Tyler is and his true troubled ways. The second verse, like you'd get your knuckles bloody from me, makes me think he committed some sort of act of violence. Maybe Tyler punched a diplomat. She's sick of his hot-headed ways and realizes he's a danger to her country. He gets jealous of every man she has to work with, so Tyler, it is deportation time. You're out of here, Tyler. And I think the song Exile basically demonstrates their breakup, and Tyler not only losing her, but losing this job opportunity, as he is literally getting banned from this country. This guy doesn't even have a way back home. He is walking the bluffs of this land that isn't his own, wondering how it all went so terribly, terribly wrong. I can't wait for the comments telling me I'm terribly, terribly wrong. So the next song that I think is in the Exiled Man storyline is This Is Me Trying. So Tyler is literally at rock bottom, and by some divine miracle, he's able to find a flight back home. And taking a page out of James' book, goes right to Elizabeth's doorway, and she's moved out of New York by this point. Like, she straight up just can't afford rent without Tyler paying his half. There's also a mention of Tyler having serious doubts about himself, like this man really messed up. I may have gotten banned from an IHOP, but this man got banned from a whole last country. And I think this character was always kind of struggling with mental illness, and there's a line that says, pulled the car off the road so the lookout could have followed my fears all the way down. That's really dark. That's some of the darkest writing Taylor has ever done. He talks more about his anger issues, which he has so many regrets about, getting his knuckles bloody maybe. But that's fair, like, son, you are banned. He says he wasted all his potential and got wasted himself, like back to his alcoholism. when he had had such a great opportunity to turn his life around and get back on track, but at least when you're at rock bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. So he says to Elizabeth, basically, I'm trying and I'm sorry. And in the bridge, Tyler acknowledges that even though he was swept up into this world of like glamour and parties and Hollywood movies, he says that she was still the flashback on the one film that really mattered to him, and he doesn't know what to say. He's not very good with his words, but damn it, he's trying. And she's the only woman who's put up with his BS, to be honest, but like she has her own faults too. So the next song I think is in the Exiled Man storyline is Hoax. I think this is from Elizabeth's perspective. I think the first verse is her immediate response to Tyler showing up suddenly. She seems kind of indecisive on how to respond. And then in the chorus, she's confessing exactly how she's feeling, which is not good. Stood on the cliffside screaming, give me a reason. That sounds very parallel to what Tyler was feeling. So she's in a bad spot too. Maybe she's moved back in with her parents. And she basically says she's been thinking about Tyler too, and no other toxic relationship will really do for her. And then in verse 2, she says, my best laid plan, your sleight of hand. Like she had hopes that they could plan out their life together in New York and that they both could get better, but he very quickly jumped on this movie opportunity and all of her plans crumbled. And in the bridge, she says she left a part of her back in New York when the relationship crumbled. And she didn't even understand how he could be glorified as this amazing actor when the Tyler that she knew died a long time ago, so what was the point? The hero died, so what's the movie for? And she expected him to be sporadic and occasionally toxic, but she didn't expect him to completely abandon her, which completely changed her perception of him, enough to not understand how someone that awful could be glorified. And she was right, because he ended up messing that up for himself and coming back, and now she's confused as to how to feel with him coming back as suddenly as he left. Then I think she ends the song kind of in defeat, but with this little jab where she says, like, yeah, you may be exiled, but you're my kingdom come undone. Hopefully these two go to couples therapy is all I can say. And I don't think this is a case like James and Betty where it's like you're pondering, oh, does she take him back? Like, I think what's being created here is these two troubled people who all they have is each other, and they kind of have to help each other and help each other to get help. And I think the narrative kind of holds them accountable for their actions, and I think it shows that two people who were in a toxic relationship can get better and like get help for and with each other kind of without like enabling the other and continuing this cycle. So I don't think it's necessarily a case of like, oh, do they get back together in a romantic way? I think it's just them being there for each other in a troubled time for both of them. And I think success is in store for these characters because today's never too late to be brand new, you know? So the last song I think is in the Exiled Man storyline is The One. I believe it's from the perspective of Sylvia, the woman who ended up exiling Tyler. I don't think she necessarily wanted to do it per se. She just knew she had to make a choice for the safety of her people. Sylvia as a character is very level-headed, which greatly contrasts with Tyler and Elizabeth, who are very much like meant for each other in a way. Big clue in the first verse. You know the greatest films of all time were never made because he got fired. His film was never made and their love never continued. And maybe she hears some kind of word that like Tyler reunited with Elizabeth and she knows that their love is definitely over. And she kind of finds herself wondering what if, but Sylvia is for sure the kind of woman who can provide closure for herself. I think this is a song that is very much like self-reflection, kind of like Cardigan was in the Love Triangle songs. And this song could be taking place like years later. Alternatively, this feels like a nod to who the person the Red album was about. We all know how much heartbreak and pain Taylor went through to create that album, and there's also so many parallels between Folklore and Red. I could make a whole other video about that. Folklore is Red on steroids, and the one could be the same one who was the one that means the most to you is the one who didn't show from The Moment I Knew off of the Red album. I think it might kind of be like a carefree nod to the love that inspired Red, maybe. Okay, so the third storyline that I think is happening here is the adult love triangle that I kind of was starting to pick up on in my Does Betty Take James Back video. And I have come to the conclusion that my suspicions were correct. There is an adult love triangle going on, except it's super dark and awful. The embittered tormentor, I believe, is a character who is embodying every single terrible person Taylor has ever met. We are talking Scott, Scooter, Kanye, Justin, probably many people we are unaware of. Like, James could never. Like, James, I think, has the ability to get better. I think he's a redeemable character at the heart of it. Taylor herself is painting him in this sympathetic light, and he is very young, and I think it's kind of assumed that he could, like, grow up later. Like, all James did was one, like, teenage act of infidelity, maybe, but this other embittered tormentor character is just mad screwed up. He's and also married. The first song, My Tears Ricochet, is very much about the embittered tormentor. Let's call him Luke, because that name just sounds sleazy. Sorry if you're a Luke watching this. Luke's object of obsession, Josephine, has passed on, likely from some kind of sudden serious accident, maybe relating to the shit he put her through. He sounds guilty. And I also would like to point out that this is very much a disguised song, where Taylor said it's about a funeral and an embittered tormentor, but I think we all know who she's singing about. This person who hears her stolen lullabies when he can't sleep at night. I think she's dressing up her own experience into a fictitious storyline involving parallels with a romantic relationship. I don't have a whole lot of lyrics to point out in particular, because I think this song is hard to argue that it isn't the song that she mentioned is about the embittered tormentor. Like, what other song would that be? I mean, if you have a theory, like, leave it down below. So the second song that I think is in this adult love triangle embittered tormentor thing is Illicit Affairs. This is about the affair that Luke had with Josephine when he was literally married. This is a very sad, soft, beautiful song, so I don't think it is from Luke's perspective, but it's not from Josephine's either, because it's in third person. It's in third person because Josephine is dead. This is like an unbiased narrator who tells it like it is. And the bridge climaxes really well into the mess that Josephine became after getting involved with Luke, and the sad part is she didn't live to tell the tale. So the narrator very specifically adds, "and you want to scream," before quoting Josephine's thoughts. And it's in third person because she's dead. This hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, we knew there was one other dead character in here, so I'm very pleased with myself about that realization. Okay, so the last song I believe is in the adult love triangle embittered tormentor storyline is Mad Woman. I believe this is from the perspective of Luke's wife. Let's call her Victoria. She's very jaded. She's very sick of Luke's shit, and she is out for blood. "My cannons all firing at your yacht" is a nice clue that Luke is definitely monetarily loaded, and Victoria would be getting half of his assets. However, she doesn't care. She is setting them on fire. And women like hunting witches too, doing your dirtiest work for you. It's obvious that wanting me dead has really brought you two together. This could be Victoria's interpretation of Luke and Josephine's affair, even if the motive behind their affair had nothing to do with her. And in reality, this feels very much like Kim and Kanye. Like, Kim's the one who lied about Taylor for Kanye, and the hate for her like brought them together as husband and wife. And the bridge is Victoria really plotting her revenge. She is going to take this man down, especially because he's responsible for Josephine's death, and she thinks he's climbed over enough innocent people in his lifetime. Who knows, maybe she'll kill him. But she sympathizes with Josephine, who should be mad, but maybe she's putting on this like cool girl air in order to keep Luke interested. Alternatively, this could be about all of the men who have wronged Taylor in a non-romantic way, and how they're probably all cheating on their wives because that's what awful people do, but their spouses aren't mad because no one likes a mad woman. I am not as confident in these theories as I was about my Does Betty Take James Back one, especially because Taylor literally didn't give us anything to work with. She only said that there's an embittered tormentor and exiled man, and she told us quite a bit about the love triangle, so I very well could be entirely wrong. And I wish you would tell us at least exactly when each song was written, like in what order. I think that would help. However, the thing I am confident about is that these songs are just as complicated as I just explained. Like, I think they are just as detailed as I explained, but I might have the details wrong. Like, they just may be completely different details. I am very confident that these characters are just as developed as I just explained, and there are all of these many characters that are fully developed, and she's just not telling us about them. The devil is in the details, you know? So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave me a comment down below with your own wild theory. I literally don't care how crazy it is. People are gonna think I'm crazy. The more out there, the better. And let me know your thoughts on mine, if there's anything else you noticed or anything that I might have missed. Also, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe down below and turn on the post notifications so that you don't miss a single swiftsgiving video. Next week, I will be posting a music major / songwriter reviews Taylor Swift's Folklore, so I will be talking about it more next week. And yeah, I hope you guys have an amazing day. Bye, guys.